This is a fan-based parody. All rights to the Poirot TV show are reserved by ITV. All rights to the Poirot novels, on which it is based, are owned by the Agatha Christie estate. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime Fiction. For those of you new to the channel, what we do here is we take crime fiction TV shows and movies and turn them into a true crime narrative. This way you get to enjoy the tension of a true crime show without all the gory details. Remember to like and subscribe for more intriguing adventures. Now enjoy the show. We find ourselves at a familiar location. Whitehaven Mansions, the home of Hercule Poirot, but we are not following the esteemed detective. Our focus shifts towards two delivery men trying to move an expensive and ornate-looking desk. The hotel security guard gives them quite an earful as they move the item through the door, fearful that it would cause quite a bit of damage. The two men pass through without much incident, but their troubles don't end there, as they still need to make their way up the stairs given that the desk is too large. All this work is to the benefit of one Ernestine Grant, who moved into the third-floor flat just the day prior, and it really shows. Her apartment is a cluttered mess, with all sorts of bric-a-brac strewn all over the place. The desk finally arrives at the apartment, and the two workers have her fill out some sort of logbook to show that the desk did indeed arrive. They request a small tip for all their troubles. She doesn't have to give them the pleasure and is well within her rights to refuse, but does so in a rather flippant and dismissive tone. While all this is going on, in the room above, Miss Patricia Matthews is dancing to very loud and lovely tune, along with her friend, Mildred Hope. And as we find our way to the 5th floor, we finally see our esteemed detective, Hercule Poirot. Though he isn't quite too esteemed today, given that he has come down with a nasty cold. He finds himself sitting at his desk with over a bowl of steaming hot water, eucalyptus oil, and a towel over his head, trying to solve the situation. The treatment seems to cause even more trouble than the cold in the first place. Miss Lemon insists that he continue his treatment so that his condition may improve. However, Poirot is adamant and stubborn. He says that all needs is another case to get his mind and body out of the mess it is in.
Oh, mon Dieu. Ça suffit.
Mr. Poirot, you've only done 7 minutes. You'll never cure your cold if you don't obey the instructions.
I can't imagine a method so undignified can cure anything, Miss Lemon. And now also I have the backache. Has the post come, Miss Lemon?
Yes, and I'm afraid there was nothing for you.
Oh.
It's only been 3 weeks since your last case.
3 weeks is an eternity to a brain like mine. Without the constant stimulation, my little grey cells will starve and die. Already you can see I am suffering the effects.
While all this is going on, Miss Grant is getting rather annoyed at all the noise that Patricia and Mildred are making upstairs. Not just the gramophone, but the singing too. For now, she refrains from confronting them directly, and just sends through a letter of sorts, inviting Patricia for a chat, saying she has something urgent to tell her. Though this does little, as Mildred finds the letter and Miss Matthews dismisses it, and carries on as usual. After dressing up in more clothes than is frankly necessary, and holding his clothes as if his guts were about to spill out, Poirot makes his way out of the flat and delivers a letter. On the way, he meets Hastings, who is beaming with joy with the state of his too-light Laganda car, after all the careful work on it. He invites Poirot for a ride to try and lift his spirits up. However, the detective is quite against the idea. He seems to think that the car fumes may make his cold even worse. Hastings has known about Poirot's cold for a while. After all, they are close friends, so he has something that he thinks will cheer the man up. 2 tickets to the Deadly Shroud, a local murder mystery dinner. At first, Poirot dismisses the idea as something quite beneath him. How could a mere murder mystery compare to the real life and death cases of Hercule Poirot? Then Hastings offers up a curious wager. Whomever can predict the identity of the killer shall receive £10. That may not sound like much to you or me, but this is 1936 we're talking about here. That amount of money would be over £600 or over $800 in today's money. A very handsome sum. The money does not interest Poirot, but, with his professional pride on the line, he eagerly accepts the wager and awaits the nighttime show. Some time before our duo leave for the show, a mysterious man in grey trousers, grey trench coat, and grey hat enters the apartment of Ernestine Grant. Upon seeing the man, she invites of worry and apprehension on her face. When it comes time to leave for the play, Poirot is still quite ill, and would rather remain home in comfort. However, he made a promise and a wager, so he makes his way to the theatre. The scene of the play we are presented with is a small dinner party with friends and family. Everybody is happy, dining away and enjoying the night. Soon, however, Lady Muriel begins to gasp for air. She tried desperately to save her own life, however, no avail, and is pronounced dead on the spot. Everyone is distressed by the whole affair, which marks the end of the first act, and the break period for everybody to stand up and get some rest. Hastings had his theories on who the killer is, and how Lady Muriel was killed. However, Poirot puts a light on all of that. He had deduced that the lady was killed via a poisoned glass of champagne, and has even deduced the identity of the killer already. He does not reveal it yet, however, does write it down on a piece of paper, and gives it to Hastings, urging him not to look until the play is over. While everyone is mingling and talking, he notices Miss Matthews along with her fiancé Donovan Bailey, and two other friends, Mildred and Jim. He goes to make conversation, however, the play is about to resume and the little chat never happens. We return to said play, and the detective of the hour, Mr. Perkins, is going through all the suspects and who had a motive to kill Lady Muriel. All of this is moot as he reveals that she was not the target of murder. Rather, it was her secret son, Major Sadler. All the guests are shocked into silence, as no one knew the nugget of information, except for his wife, who is the true killer. Upon hearing this, Poirot is confused and quite angry, perhaps owing to his cold. He starts protesting that the writer of the play is an imbecile, and they should be embarrassed to have written such garbage. Hastings pulls out the paper from his pocket and is quite surprised to discover the name written on it. Chivers, the butler. Our duo make their way home, and Poirot is still upset at the whole affair. However, he does keep his end of the bargain, and the £10 wager.
Perhaps it is time I retire, Hastings.
I say, Poirot, you're beginning to make me feel badly about all this.
No, not at all. Hercule Poirot is a man of his word, even if the playwright is not. We were not given all the facts. It was only at the end that we discover that Major Sadler is Lady Muriel's son. And the theatre has made my cold even worse.
Miss Matthews and friends return to the flat, having had a much better time of the whole thing. Everyone is laughing and enjoying themselves over the night they just had. She even makes a slight jab and claims she knew it was Mrs. Sadler the whole time. The festivities come to an end as they reach the door. Miss Matthews seems to have left her keys in the flat. She double-check and triple-checks her handbag, but no luck. She really did leave her keys in the flat, which is a real problem, since the night porter will be asleep. Jimmy asks if there's a fire lift, which she replies, no, but there is a service elevator in the basement, she responds. Jimmy suggests that perhaps they could use this elevator to gain access to the apartment. Donovan agrees that the idea is at least worth a shot, and they are on their way. Meanwhile, Poirot is writing out the check for the wager that he promised Hastings. The captain protests that the whole thing was just a bit of fun. However, Poirot insists on the matter. He is nothing if not a man of his word. This task is interrupted by a few creaking sounds coming from the service elevator shaft. Before they look to see the situation, Hastings turns off the light, so the pair won't be spotted. They look down to find that Jimmy and Donovan opening the service hatch to Miss Matthews' rooms. Hastings says they might be burglars, and Poirot disagrees, asking why would random ruffian burglars be wearing evening attire? And surely they would not make such a racket as they do. He makes his way out of the flat to find Miss Matthews and Mildred singing their way to pass the time. Jimmy and Donovan enter the flat to find they have come the wrong floor. They are in 36B and not 46B, the home of Ernestine Grant. A loud snore comes from one of the rooms, and they make their way out of the flat. Jimmy turns back, noticing a foot sticking out from one of the many boxes strewn all over the flat. Both men go to check. To their surprise, they found the cold and lifeless body of Ernestine Grant. They then go and tell their two friends, who are still singeing on the stairs, and that is when our duo learn of the grisly and gruesome murder. He goes to the scene, and Jimmy is happy to have such a highly esteemed detective on the scene. He is not used to this gory business, so he looks away, quite overwhelmed by the whole affair. Poirot retraces Jimmy and Donovan's steps, trying to get a clear picture of the situation, noting that the elevator door was bolted and the light in the service lunch was turned off. Another curious detail is a loud snoring noise from one of the rooms. This time, our group manages to locate the source of the disturbance. It turns out to be Mrs. Trotter, the live-in maid. She must have managed to sleep through the whole affair. Poirot decides not to wake her up, as it would achieve very little. He makes his to the living room to examine the body, determining that the victim must have died a few hours ago. A curious detail is that when Jimmy sits down and rests his arm on the table, it gets covered in blood. Poirot deduced that the murder must have occurred there. Then the perpetrator must have moved the body. And the detail is that the last of the mail was delivered that evening, as told by the pile of letters on the table. In the meantime, the police arrive, and Chief Inspector Jack takes over, getting to work right away, asking questions, but that takes some time. Jimmy and Donovan find it hard to admit that they broke into someone's apartment, even if the whole business was an accident. Climbing a service lift like they did is not exactly enthusiastically endorsed by the police. Jack is less than happy with the whole affair. Not only due to the fact that he has been awakened so late at night, he is now dealing with the whole situation. Given that no crime was committed by the two, it is decided to let them go, and the investigation is carried on. Poirot, Jimmy, Donovan, and Mildred gather together for a lovely meal, courtesy of Miss Matthews. Mildred remarks that he must be used to all of this by now, to which he agrees, but he says it is far more pleasant than the murder mystery of the previous night. He is still salty over the prior night and claims the butler was the only one with a motive and the ability to kill in such a manner. Chief Inspector Jack has been listening to this conversation and then makes his presence known to the group. He takes Poirot aside to discuss the whole case in detail.
Excuse me.
It seems she had the evening off. She went out at 5 and got back about 10 o'clock, letting herself in with her own key.
She noticed nothing unusual?
She thought her mistress was in bed. Never thought to look behind the packing cases.
It's very curious.
Curious.
To try and hide the body.
Didn't want the crime discovered until he made his getaway.
Perhaps. Well, perhaps. Oh, pardon. Please continue, Chief Inspector.
Well, we found this on the floor. Dropped in his haste, I expect. Take a look at the corner, Poirot.
The note is simply signed Frazier. Jack is certain that the letter and the handkerchief are all he needs. However, Poirot is not entirely convinced, so he asks Miss Trotter for her knowledge on the matter. All she knows is she went into the living room, left the mail on the table, and left the flat. With all the necessary information collected, Poirot makes one small request to go through the flat. Initially, the Chief Inspector is very reluctant. He is sure the case is open and shut. However, after some persuasion, he realizes there cannot be any harm in it and allows him to enter. Miss Matthews is rather disturbed by the entire situation, having not known Miss Grant. However, it is only common decency to have sympathy for the dead. Donovan tries to calm her with the reassurance that after tonight this will be all over and will soon become a faded memory. He goes back into the flat with Jimmy and Captain Hastings, offering their assistance with the case. Poirot follows his path yet again, making sure things add up. However, something isn't right. He senses something is wrong and rummages through the bin, finding a small vial containing a dark, mysterious liquid. Poirot holds it under his nose. Poirot's cold prevents any serious reaction, but Donovan takes the bottle and raises the lid. Instantly, he faints. Before he can even fall to the floor, Poirot yells at him for such a stupid act. Donovan soon wakes up, insisting he is fine and doesn't need any more attention. Poirot insists he should rest, so he can fully recover. He gets Hastings to make Donovan a cup of coffee and moves him to a more comfortable chair, telling Jimmy to fetch a glass of whiskey, while he is asking himself what needs to be done next. Poirot has already figured out the case, but says nothing further to the others. There is no such person as John Fraser. It was a ruse invented to mislead the police. The light switch in the kitchen was also a ruse, designed to get Jimmy into the living room. This may seem confusing, but think about it. If the lights were on in the kitchen, it would become apparent that this was not Miss Matthews' home. They would have no reason to enter the living room if the lights were on in the kitchen. Poirot pulls a key from his pocket, and Jimmy initially believes it to be the key to the apartment they are currently in. However, it is the key to the apartment upstairs, which belongs to Miss Matthews. Poirot goes on to explain that Donovan stole the key from her to escort him and Jimmy in the service elevator. Poirot then reveals that he planted the small vial of liquid containing ethyl chloride, a potent sedative, in the bin as a trap. He used the opportunity of his cold to get Donovan to sniff the sedative once Hastings left to prepare the coffee. While Jimmy went to fetch the whiskey, Poirot searched Donovan's pockets, finding what he was looking for. He retrieved the key to the flat from Donovan's pocket as well as something else. The body of Miss Grant was placed in an unorganized fashion that should have been easier to hide. Donovan intended for the body to be spotted by Jimmy, creating a pretext for staying in the flat. In fact, he had already shot Miss Grant previously, arriving much earlier than his companions. He was the man in the full grey outfit, who was unable to find what he was looking for before fleeing. He then waited for Mrs. Trotter to deliver the mail in the evening. After the end of the murder mystery play, he stole the key to Miss Matthews' apartment, which served as an excuse for him to wander around the apartment and find a certain letter, which is also in Poirot's hand right now. Jimmy wondered what could possibly be in that letter.
Oh, this letter, Jimmy. This was the second item I took from Monsieur Bailey's pocket. It was this letter that he was so desperate to find.
Are you saying, then, that Donovan murdered Mrs. Grant?
Exactement.
But why? He didn't even know Mrs. Grant. Why should he want to kill her?
Jimmy, before I tell you, allow me to ask you a question. It is a most personal one. Are you in love with Mademoiselle Patricia? Oh, come on. Don't be shy. If I were your age, monsieur, without doubt, I too would be in love with her.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I care for Pat damnably, but of course she's engaged to Donovan.
She will need you once this trouble is known.
How do you mean?
Once this case becomes public, Jimmy, it will be very difficult to keep her name out of it entirely. You see, Mademoiselle Patricia was the motive for the murder.
All doubts about Poirot's hunch vanish, as the four men pursued Donovan, who has evaded the room and is attempting to escape the apartment via the elevator. Donovan was not a suspect, yet he felt the need to flee, which confuses the police and the others, who rush downstairs in an attempt to catch him, but in doing so, they have made a fatal error. In fact, Jimmy's actions were just a ruse. He simply needed to send the elevator down in order to diversify attention, so he could sneak into flat 36B and retrieve the essential letter. They have no idea where Donovan could have gone until they hear a distinctive sound emitting from the basement. They hastily head to the service elevator shaft, with Jimmy trying to look up in order to spot Donovan. But the man is smart enough to stay hiding, managing to secretly escape their grasp. Hastings hurriedly exits out of the building's entrance, but there is no sight of Donovan. He then looks further out into the nearby roads, which is a good decision, because that is where Donovan is heading. Donovan, however, managed to stay out of sight, his black suit blending well in the darkness. After hiding for some time, Donovan realizes that time is on running out, so he looks for a way out. The solution soon reveals itself as Hastings' car comes into view. In a daring move, he crawls towards the vehicle and quickly jumps inside. He presses the start button, which immediately brings the engine to life. Once the car is fully in motion, its lights expose his location to everyone around. However, Donovan is not concerned and accelerates towards Hastings, who positions himself in the middle of the road to stop the vehicle. Just as they are about to collide, Hastings dives out of the way, and Donovan does the same before crashing into a nearby lamppost, bringing an abrupt halt to the madcaper. Hastings regains his composure after the shocking occurrence and rushes towards the crash site. Poirot inquires if Donovan is okay, while Hastings is more concerned with the condition of the car. With Donovan in cuffs, everyone head towards the third-floor apartment, where they will soon discover the truth behind this complicated case.
Dear Madam, we return the document you forwarded to us. It is quite in order, and the fact of the marriage having taken place abroad does not invalidate it in any way. Yours truly, etc., etc.
So, Jimmy, you ask why Mrs. Grant, huh? Eh bien, voilà. The marriage certificate between Donovan Grant and Ernestine Trapshaw, dated 1930.
Who's Donovan Grant?
He now calls himself Donovan Bailey.
With his deeds exposed, Donovan Bailey confesses everything. He tried to get a divorce from Miss Grant, but she was unwilling. He begged for her agreement numerous times, but she refused each time. She started calling him and mocking him and threatened to reveal their marriage to Patricia Matthews. This was too much for Donovan, as Miss Grant moved into an apartment exactly beneath Miss Matthews' flat and was prepared to disclose everything the next day, which was unacceptable to Donovan. He arranged a meeting with her under the pretense of a friendly visit. He was indeed the man in the full grey suit. Donovan attempted to convince his wife to terminate the relationship, but she refused. When he realized his efforts would be fruitless, he shot her, and as she collapsed, he stuffed her comatose form behind a row of unpacked boxes. He searched through the mail, hoping to find the letter from the lawyer, yet without success. He then departed and panned the rest of his strategy. Donovan stole the key from Patricia's handbag, joined them at the murder mystery play, and the evening unfolded previously explained. Overall, it was a rather grim case. Chief Inspector Jack arrived on the scene to arrest Bailey and take him into custody. As the case reaches its conclusive end, Hastings is still grieving another loss: his beloved car. All the time, effort, and dedication he spent on his vehicle had come to nothing with one simple crash. Hastings is genuinely devastated by the loss of the car, more so than the passing of Miss Grant. It may appear cold-hearted, but Hastings has seen much more death and suffering than average, having served as a captain in the army and collaborated with Poirot. His car was one of his most treasured possessions. Hastings feels a great sense of loss, as his precious car, his own creation, was now nothing more than a wreck. Unsure of what to do next, Poirot comes forward with a generous offer.
Hastings, my friend, Poirot is as magnanimous in defeat as he is modest in victory.
Oh, yes.
In view of the fact that you are going to need every penny you can get to restore this beautiful machine to health, I have decided to pay up and be content.
I say. Thanks, old boy.
Think nothing of it, old boy.
And that's it, folks. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. If you want to hear more of these gripping tales, make sure to like, comment, and hit the bell icon to get notified when we release more videos. Thank you again, and goodbye.